Mikhail Alfon, welcome to the WorkPlay Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Lyric. I'm really excited to share with you.
I am so excited to have you on because we're going to dive into a topic that we have never dived into on the podcast. And I really think it's going to amplify people's visuals that they're creating, and also just give you another option for marketing and for generating revenue. So I'm really, really excited.
Amazing.
Before we dive into everything, I want you just to introduce yourself, your business, and how long you've been in business.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we go on, actually, the little sound bar at the bottom of our screen, you get squiggly lines and I don't get squiggly lines.
It's all good. Zencaster is
You,
like weird about it, and everyone always asks me that, and I'm like, nope, it's okay. We're still getting audio.
okay, great. So as the listener can tell, I'm very detail oriented. Actually, that's quite the opposite of the case. So a little bit about me. I think first and foremost, I'm a proud father and husband. And then after that, maybe I'm a lot of other things. But Blue Light Media is my company. We're a digital marketing agency for consumer packaged goods, primarily in the natural product space. So think any sort of supplement that you might find at Target, Whole Foods, or anything like that. There's a strong chance that we've talked to them at one point and potentially worked with them. We've been in business for 10 years. This is actually Blue Light's 10th year and my 10th year as maybe a agency owner, entrepreneur. And I actually didn't even know what an agency was when I started my business. I started my career in marketing working at a local SEO firm. So, 10 years ago, it was like press one to be on the first page of Google was like the hot business to do. And I was actually a telemarketer then, which I think was really helpful because it helped me learn how to get told no a lot in the most kind ways I could possibly think of. And I didn't see a white space, but I noticed that social media marketing was something that was coming up more frequently. And I asked my boss at the time if it'd be okay if I started doing that as a side hustle. They said no. I did it anyway, and I got fired for it. And I was forced into having to make this business work. I guess I potentially could have started, worked at another place, but for whatever reason, I was like, you know what, I'm going to make this thing work. And, fast forward to today, there's been a lot of ups and downs along the way, but we've been able to work with some of the most recognizable brands in the world, and some of the most recognizable icons in the world, which is exciting. So I'll flex for a little bit. Bulletproof Coffee, NutriBullet, LL Cool J, Ford, P&G. We've been able to run campaigns and facilitate incredible partnerships with brands like that. Today, though, our primary focus, again, is that natural product space, typically brands doing under $20 million a year, really being either an extension of their marketing department or their entire marketing department.
I love that. And I love how long you've been doing this because it means that you've been around pre-COVID boom, I feel like. I think a lot of companies like started and grew inside of like this COVID bubble, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And the fact that you've been around before that and after, I think shows a lot of like just your experience in like the market itself, because I do feel like the market right now, and I know that has been like on so many people's minds, it feels a little different. And I just feel like working with people who have seen differences in the economy, differences in how the market is working for small businesses is so essential.
Yeah.
I'm very curious, what do you think makes these brands attracted to Blue Light and yourself?
That is honestly our number one, maybe the number one asset that brings us the most attention is some of the content that we put out. We're very focused on a specific, aspect of people's marketing journey, and we're like end-to-end social media, right? So whether that be content, user generated, influencers, paid social, that sort of thing, we're really managing that. The second we get outside of that, the second we get outside of that, like for Google AdWords, let's just say, or even programmatic ads, something like this, that's not, we're very comfortable saying like, we don't do that, because what we've noticed is that you mentioned pre and post COVID. When we started Blue Light Media, we had to convince people that they had to be on Instagram to market themselves, right? And now that's just like the barrier to entry. And along with that, we've noticed that there's really been a resurgence in social media marketing. And at one point it was, oh yeah, my cousin does that. You've been around for a long time too. My cousin does that. Yeah, I might have my nephew help me out, whatever the case might be, to really these platforms are really the center of community, culture, and commerce. That's where people are getting their news. That's where they're discovering brands. That's where they're connecting with people. And so because we've focused so much on social media over the last decade, which is kind of crazy to hear, we're able to speak really clearly to these brands and know where we fit in their journey, as opposed to being at one point, trying to be a jack of all trades, that sort of thing.
Totally. And you're talking about this marketing journey. Like, tell me about that. Like, can you pinpoint where people should be on their marketing journey to work with Blue Light?
Yeah, that's a good question. If they wanted to work with us, like we work with companies in various capacities, right? But if they wanted to work with Blue Light, I would say, get to the point in your business where you have like a full-time marketing manager, and you realize that you need to expand on your social media. So, that marketing manager probably isn't a great paid media manager. They might not be a great photographer. They might not be a great email marketer, those types of things. They might be really good at one thing, but at one point you're going to need all those things. So I would say relatively early on, where we often don't fit is when companies have, 3 to 5 people on their marketing team. Typically they have somebody for content. Typically they have ads taken care of in-house. So yeah, in their early stages, definitely not pre-revenue, but in their early stages when they're starting to see a little traction with their brand.
I think that's really helpful to know, because I think so many people kind of jump in sometimes prematurely, or they like have different expectations. So I just think it's always good to kind of know like where you stand on that journey before you go looking and hiring and things like that.
Yeah. And if I may, sometimes it makes more sense to hire us as your first marketing team. Sometimes it makes sense for that. But again, I would recommend that we're not the cheapest agency to work with, but we offer a really good service. And one of the pitches that I'll have toward up and coming brands is that, you're really going to have a full marketing department with end-to-end social media management for the cost of one senior employee. And so if you look at it in that frame, we can really be a great stepping stool until you start building, your internal team yourself. And that's typically what happens is a client will work with us for 18 to 24 months to either get acquired or they start building out their own things in-house.
I really want to go in the direction of like social media, because it's such a broad term. And I want to get very granular because I actually want to talk to you about strategy of the social. It's the number one question I think WorkPlay members are always asking is like, how do we elevate social? How do we capitalize on social? And I just think it's a huge bag of everything. And so I would love to know from your perspective, like when you say social media management, when you say like Blue Light is helping in this way, like what is that? What does social media mean to you guys and your clients, and where you're kind of helping them?
100%. So today we primarily focus, and I would say for whether you're a personal brand or not necessarily, personal brands are a little different. But for the context of our clients, which are a lot of CPGs, I would say that your primary focus has to be Meta, so Instagram and Facebook, as well as TikTok. And the two are approached a little bit differently there. For personal brands, service providers, those types of things, I think it's really important for you to figure out what platform is the easiest for you to create content on a regular basis. So for me, for example, we've known each other for a long time. Believe it or not, I do not like photos taken of me. I don't like videos taken of me, any of these things. And over the last 2 years, I've just embraced that. And I've focused more on my writing and, some of the podcast that I host. And so for the next person, if you feel really comfortable creating videos, go to the platforms where it's creating videos. So social media to us, though, to answer your question, is, it's those platforms that really matter. It's Meta and TikTok. It's also X. It's also LinkedIn, and it's also Snapchat. But we primarily run ads on Snapchat, but not a lot of day-to-day management on Snapchat.
Okay, tell me about organic versus ads, because I think people forget ads in a way
Mm-hmm.
of when they're talking about like social media marketing.
Yeah.
At
Yeah.
least from what I've seen and heard from people.
Yeah, I agree with you. And potentially they're kind of worried about spending money on ads, which is perfectly fine. Because you have to pay for it, I guess is the big thing. But organic is really anything that you're publishing without any media dollars behind it, right? So anytime you post Instagram, anytime you post it TikTok, and there isn't any ad dollars behind that, you're not boosting your posts, that's really going to be your organic strategy. With that being said, and I could be shooting myself in the foot here, what you're doing to help clients is really important, because you need constant content all of the time to even have like a shot. You have to be able to have photos, you have to be able to have videos, and some written. Organic social as it stands today, in my opinion, and I was just writing about this, it's having a resurgence, because what TikTok did during COVID, what a relevant conversation, right? What TikTok did during COVID is it opened up the playing field to a lot more creators. And the other thing it did was it made you focus on the person as opposed to the brand. So you'll notice now, even on Instagram, where brands were, posting, pre-COVID, it was product photo, product photo, product photo. Now you're seeing so many faces there. You're seeing memes, you're seeing user-generated content. And so when we look at somebody's strategy, whether they're a personal brand or whether they're an organization of any kind, they have to be creating video, user-generated content that has the highest chance of getting shared, that's adding value, and within the context of each one of those platforms. And since AI is choosing a lot of the content that's being served to me or you, it follower count matters a lot less than it used to. Who you're following matters a lot less than it used to. And what matters now is if your content actually fits the preferences of your target customer, because you'll see one reel and then you've noticed on Instagram, you scroll up and it's from somebody that you don't even know. And so you want to be that person that gets discovered when somebody swipes up on one of their reels.
I loved what you said about person versus brand and how the market is really shifting, how the consumers are really like shifting how they want their experience on social media and the platforms. How does a company that is so brand centered right now, or they're like product companies where it just like it's not clicking for them, how they need to include like the personable element inside of their social media marketing? Like, how are you doing that with people that maybe like don't want to be the face of their company, they have a product, that sort of thing? How can they like get on the train here?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's two ways that they can do that. One is through influencers, if they want to do that. And the other one is through user-generated content. And I guess there's a third way too. They can hire somebody in-house who's just like a full-time content creator and will be the face of the brand, if they wanted to do something like that. But when I talk about influencers, this isn't like on the level of The Rock or anything like that, who happens to have a hair care company, which is really interesting to me, but that's fine. What's crazy is it's still selling. But when I talk about yeah, right? It's so weird. He has no hair. Make it make sense.
Maybe that's why it's working, because people are like, what's going on?
Exactly. So influencers and creators, right? So when I'm talking about influencers and creators, this is separate from user-generated content. We're really looking for storytellers. We're really looking for people who have built a community around who they are as people, and not necessarily big followings. It's very different. And I think you're probably the same way. If you think about the type of content that you consume now, it's coming from a person, or it's a relatable moment or something like that. And that's the thing that really gets you to stick there. So you want to find creators and find influencers who are aligned with your brand, have the same values, and look at them as a window into your brand and have them tell the story about their brand from their perspective, because that's what's going to get new people focused on your brand. On the other side of that, there's user-generated content. And there's, I'm sure hundreds of thousands, if not millions of user-generated content creators. There's programs like Billo, whatever the case may be. A lot of these creators and influencers double as user-generated content creators. There's two separate things where the influencer might be a window, the user-generated content creator, they're more of a mirror. So they're saying the things that you want them to say. You're scripting it. And those people are great. I think both of those ways you can start adding personality to a brand and you can make them feel alive. You can make a brand feel alive by, one, having people, again, share their perspective on the brand and their voice, and then having other creators share the story that you want them to tell through user-generated content.
Okay, this is, I feel like, a really important conversation because I think my WorkPlay members are not familiar with what like user-generated content is, or even like influencers. So like I'm talking to like my personal brands out there, my service providers who are just like, oh, like an influencer, like someone who puts on like clothing and shows, I just have a feeling that someone listening is thinking like that in their head. So how does like one who's like maybe a personal brand, like utilize user generated content? Like break it really down for us. Like, do we have to download the apps that you were saying? Like how do we pay these people? Where do we find them? When do we use them?
So from the, for one, if it's a personal brand or a service provider, they have a great opportunity to be the influencer themselves, right? Creating that content. So let's talk about that for a second. Your personal brands and those service providers, in the same way that I do, and I've seen you do as well, is you're sharing content about the actual work that you're doing so that people know about that. Now, as we were earlier, that might not be your forte. You might hate putting yourself out there, especially like being the person who has face to camera. So from an influencer standpoint, we don't necessarily have to think of an influencer like the fashion get ready with me type of influencer. But what that influencer could be is potentially like, if it's a local service provider, I'm just going to take something really random, not random, but like a real estate agent, for example. A local influencer could be the owner of the butcher shop down the street that's really popular that everybody goes to. So how can you two collaborate on something? And you can start to siphon in his audience, or their audience rather, and your audience, so that you're growing together because you both have something valuable to bring to the table. So that could be an influencer, for example. On the user-generated side, slightly different. So let's take that same real estate agent. Customer testimonials are big. So that can be your user-generated content. And, let's just say it's like, hey, like for $500 for somebody that you just closed the house for, which isn't a big deal if you're thinking about the commissions, for $500, would you and your family be open to creating like just a quick video about your experience working with me? And that's your user-generated content there.
I think that's a really good distinction. And like, I think people get it now because this is so, it can be so creative. I don't see anyone doing that in some of these spaces that maybe it hasn't hit these industries yet. So I think like that is so valuable. How are we tracking the data on this? Because I am someone who am like, I don't want to do something unless I can see an ROI on it. How does it work with organic? Because I want to get into paid, but how does it work with organic? Because I think that's a little bit tougher to track, unless I'm wrong.
Totally. No, you're not wrong. It is a little bit tougher. You don't get as much data, but Instagram and TikTok, if you have a creator profile or a business profile on either of those, they do give you a decent amount of insights on how many people you're reaching on a regular basis, right? Reaching, impressions, engagements, things of that nature. So just tap in. If you're on your Instagram profile, you should have I want to say it's right at the very top of it. You should have something that says, your professional dashboard if you have a business profile. And that'll show you how many people you've reached, how many people have engaged, things of that nature. So from an organic standpoint, if you have the platform set up right, it should be relatively easy. And I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, totally. I'm going to elaborate on that though, because like when you look at those analytics, like I've reached this many people or my reel has gotten let's just say like 10,000 views versus my other reel that got like 1,000 views. Like, how are we correlating that to success in like the marketing side of things? Like, where does that go in terms of like, you know, money, revenue, bottom line when we're creating this content?
Yeah, absolutely. So here's the thing. You can't expect creating reels and content for 1 month and it's going to like completely change your world. You know what I mean? 10 years into the game, I'm still creating content on a regular basis to get people into my funnel. And it might be hard to say, oh, that reel produced this, you know, produced this outcome or produced this lead or whatever the case may be. But over time, I promise you, and I think I would want to challenge like anybody that's a personal brand right now, consistently creating content. People will tell you 3 times a day. I think that's kind of close to impossible, to be honest. But consistently creating content. I'm talking about 3 to 5 original pieces of content every week for 12 months. You will see your business grow. You'll get DMs. You'll see people in the comments. You might even get a direct email. You might get a referral. But the fact that you're in people's faces like that all of the time, I promise you it still happens today. For me, man, there are very few times in my 10-year career where I can say like, oh yeah, that that Snapchat or that Instagram story turned into a lead. But what I do know is the consistency month over month is something that, you know, I get better results from than launching it. Again, shooting myself in the foot. Like the ROI from that is like better than launching ads because that's where people get to know you. You know what I mean? And you have to look at it like this as well. Let's say you are running ads. Somebody sees it and then they go to your profile. You haven't posted in 6 months. And the last post that you had was you were at the US Open of Surf in Huntington Beach, but you are an interior designer. What does that even have to do with your business? You know what I mean? So now, because you decided that you wanted to take all these beautiful photos and create all this beautiful content with WorkPlay branding, but you'd never posted it to your Instagram. Somebody ended up on your site after you launched, or on your Instagram page after you launched ads, but there was nothing to reinforce the fact that you're actually good at what you do. So you might post a reel on Monday, but then 3 months from now, somebody might actually see that and be like, oh, that's the person I want to work with. You're constantly building yourself a reputation. I know that's not the answer that everybody wants to hear because it actually takes work, but like, that's just the fact of the matter. You know what I mean? And in fact, at Blue Light Media, we're investing in a lot more content, knowing that it's a little bit harder to track because at the end of the day, if you just track your leads in general, I'm sorry that I'm a little long-winded here, track your leads in general and put different sources from those leads, ads, networking, personal brand, and whatever else you're doing, like cold emails, direct mail, whatever else you're doing. Watch how many of those leads come from personal brand just over time. It's not going to happen overnight, but over the course of a year, like literally I was just looking at our last 20 leads, 18 of them were from personal brand. Because I met 3 people I did good work with and they continue referring me. You know what I mean? So
no, I'm so glad that you answered it like that because I just think that people always think there's a finish line. Like once I do this, then I will get this and then I can coast. You know what I mean? And it's like content doesn't work like that. It's like a compounding interest sort of thing. And it's like,
so I have a question for you.
Yeah. Tell me.
You're the perfect case study for this, right? How many ads have you launched in the last at least like 5 or 6 years that you've been in business?
So you know what's funny is we did do a little bit of ads. You know, we didn't grow based off of ads. We grew based off of like just organic, you know, referral. And still to this day, like our Instagram is so set up to convert. And, you know, there's so many things that you can add to your Instagram, like ManyChat and things like that to like kind of like help with the tracking of the organic stuff. But like it all flows through our Instagram account. It's insane. And it's like, we're in a summer campaign right now for WorkPlay pop-ups where you can, you know, we're popping up in different cities. And it's like, the amount of traffic that comes from just us posting on social is insane. Like, I'm like, oh, okay, like, let's ramp it up, marketing team. Let's ramp it up on the organic traffic. It's getting a lot of traction right now. Whereas, like you said, before TikTok, it might have been like dwindling a little bit of like, you kind of had to like pay to play. And then now it's just like, you can get that boost if you are smart about it organically.
Yeah.
I want to know like how you're blending like the organic with the paid. Because I do think there is a time for paid things, and paid ads have worked for us in certain ways, and then other ways it hasn't. So I would love to hear from you, because I know a lot of people have gotten burned in the past from paid.
100%. Real quick, as a fellow podcaster, your transition just now was fantastic. And secondly, like those referrals that you're getting, let's say, you know, it's a friend of a previous client. What's the first thing everybody does when they learn of a new brand or restaurant? They go to Instagram and they see the food. And Google. Your Instagram, your personal one, WorkPlay branding, it's perfectly curated. So if I'm going to you for my own personal branding, if I'm going to you for any sort of design aspect, like, it's a no-brainer. What your brand actually did was it helped you get across the finish line without you even knowing it. It wasn't because of one reel, but all of the content that you put out over the last couple of years. Now, to answer your question, sorry, this is something I'm really passionate about, as you can tell.
I love it. That's why you're on the podcast.
Yeah, right. And to answer your question, how are we blending the paid media along with organic? Now, I'm going to speak in two contexts. One is going to be personal brand, and one is going to be consumer packaged goods. Consumer packaged goods and products, those sorts of things, that's a little bit easier because we're constantly running ads with organic. But we're posting to organic social every single day, and we're running ads every single month. And typically those clients have a monthly budget based on what the revenue goals are already set in place, right? But it doesn't matter what your budget is. Getting that additional reach is usually pretty helpful if you're an emerging brand, and like even if it's $500 a month. But what you have to understand is that the smaller the budget is, the slower you're going to get results, right? So for example, I'm really bad at math, so let's see if this works. If I'm spending $500 a month and you're spending $10,000 a month, you're going to see results 20 times faster than I am, right? Because 500 times 20 is 10,000. I'm sorry, Mrs. Powers, I shouldn't have fell asleep in your algebra classes, but that's where we are today. But you're going to see those results faster. So like, you can't expect your whole world to change over $500. In addition to that, if your average client is a $30,000 client or a $10,000 client, you know, it might cost you $2,000, $3,000 to acquire that client. So you have to really understand, how much does it cost me to acquire those clients? And if it's a customer for consumer packaged goods, if it's $50 to convert a new customer, okay, cool. So if I only spend $500 a month, I'm only going to get 10 new customers. Does that make sense? So that's on the consumer packaged goods side. For the personal brand, service providers, real estate agents, brand consultants, whatever the case may be, it might not be sustainable to even spend $500 a month, and you might not see the benefit in that. So one thing that's really practical for you, though, is because now you're posting, you've heard this podcast, you have incredible content from WorkPlay branding, and you have this information from Blue Light Media, you're posting reels every day, and you see that one gets 10,000 views and all the other ones only had like 400. Now take like $50 and boost that one post, because that one was the one that was resonating with people, and that one has the highest chance of reaching more people, resonating with more people, and getting you the business results that you're looking for. So if you can't set aside a monthly budget, when you do have one of those posts go like micro viral, I like to call it, put some money behind that. Sorry, I paused because I don't actually call it microviral. That actually just happened right now.
I honestly love that term. I think you should coin it. That is like, it's so true, because it's like, okay, well, it's not like 1 million, but it's like way more than you typically get. So yeah, what is it? It's microviral for you.
Exactly. If I have 500 followers and I get 10,000 views, like that is viral for me. And in fact, like even now, It's hard to get 10,000 views on Reels, but you got to be okay with hitting just singles. Eventually one will come up, but it's truly about consistency.
Yeah, it's interesting because I again, like, I just think it's hitting on this aspect of like instant gratification. There needs to be a finish line to like the work that I'm doing. And it's like one of the reasons why WorkPlay branding is the model that it is because you constantly have to test the visual campaign, how well it's doing. You have to create new so that you can start to see where the data is and where the needle is being moved. And so it's interesting that we're having this conversation around like organic, and then we boost that into paid once we start to see some of these metrics. So
I want to give your listeners a really crazy hack. If you're wondering about what to focus on when it comes to Instagram specifically, just pay attention to what the newest updates are. So, for example, in the last 3 to 4 months, everybody's stickers on their Instagram stories changed, right? What does that tell you? They want you to use Instagram stories again. So now, as a content creator, we have to be creating more stories. Next month, if you see that, you're getting, you're eligible for a bonus on Reels, like they're obviously prioritizing Reels, so you can kind of shift like that. Anyways.
I love that. I love that. I mean, it's a hack. I feel like we as business owners who are not in this space, we're not thinking about Instagram all day long. We're thinking about our clients. And so understanding like how the platform works is very, very important. I just think it's so overwhelming sometimes because it's like, it's another feature I have to optimize, and it's like I can't even optimize Reels. I'm like 3 years behind. So if someone's getting overwhelmed with all of this, where are they starting? Where are you starting if you had to start your business right now?
Focus on the one thing that you're really, really good at. So if I were to start it over again, I would just focus on my podcast only, because this is really easy for me to do. And then, you can outsource the editing and everything like that for relatively cheap. But for for the list, what is the thing that you're really good at? Are you really good at writing? Is that comfortable for you? Can you start an email newsletter? Great. So start an email newsletter. Seth Godin, for example, who's like one of the goats of marketing, he doesn't have an active Instagram profile. He doesn't have an active LinkedIn or TikTok or any of that. He just has a blog on his page, and his blog, maybe it's only like 2 paragraphs long, but every single day he's writing on his blog, and everybody knows he's in marketing. Most people know who Seth Godin is. You know what I mean? So there are very few Gary V's out there, and there's very few, Alex Hormozzi's and all these new like influencers that are coming out who have the resources to like have a videographer, a copywriter, and all these people creating content. I still do a majority of my content on my own, and so I just have to focus on what's the easiest for me to create.
I love that, because like if you're trying to pull your own teeth, trying to do things, it's like it's never going to be done correctly or consistently. Love it.
Yeah.
I want to go really quickly into what you're doing for WorkPlay members, and we're launching a power up together. So I want everyone to be aware of this power up, how they can actually utilize it with the method, and how it's actually going to optimize their visuals. So I would love for you to take it away. Let us know, like all of the WorkPlay members who are currently doing quarterly shoots, they are getting content. They're using it in email marketing. They're using it in their social, organic social. They have all of this bank of content to use. How are you going to amplify that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and you primarily do photography, is that right?
Yeah.
Like brand photography?
And people can get like B-roll video. You can also choose iPhone content. So you can get a whole day of iPhone content. So lots of ways to optimize different types of content.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, you're providing a tremendous value for people, which I think is great, because a really good photo goes a long way. If there's anything that TikTok and Instagram have done over the last like 4 or 5 years, it's really raised the bar as to what is acceptable on social media. That's just it. Like, you cannot put out bad content, and you helping people create good content is a tremendous value. So here's how we're helping, especially on that quarterly basis. Now, we primarily, most of our focus has been on has been on consumer packaged goods and those e-commerce brands, which we can definitely help out. And, that might be for a different conversation. But as it pertains to the power up that we have together, those are definitely for those service providers, those consultants, those personal brands. And really what we're doing is we're setting up your campaigns in such a way that you have the best chance of achieving your business goals. So is it lead generation? Is it more engagement? Whatever the case may be, is it, actual direct messages so that you can talk to somebody? We're going to help you set up all of that. And I think the key advantage to working with us is that on this power up is that we really break out all of the nitty gritty that tends to be the overwhelming part. How do I set up my Facebook pixel? How do I set up my ads manager? How do I set up my first campaign? Like, there is actually a lot of steps to actually launching your first campaign, and we do all that for you. Now, once all the heavy lifting is done, we'll actually work with you one-on-one so that you can manage the day-to-day by yourself if you'd like to. And if not, you can always call us more. But it's a one-time program. We set up all of your campaigns by professionals who have spent millions of dollars on ads, been in business for the last 10 years. We really know what we're doing when we set that up. So you can rest assured that you're going to have everything set up correctly. And then we're also training you to manage it on your own, what to look out for, those types of things, so that whether you work with us on your own or with somebody else, you leave educated in knowing like, oh, this is what I should look for. This is what I should expect from a vendor if I decide to hire somebody to manage my ads, like those types of things. And so we're really sharing we're definitely providing a service, but then sharing a lot of our knowledge as well.
I think that was so important for me, like when we were chatting and having you come in and provide the service for WorkPlay members. So important for everyone listening to actually have ownership over the strategies that they are implementing. And so that's why this was such a no-brainer for us to provide to our WorkPlay members, because it's like, you guys are already doing the work of creating the content, creating that high quality, image, video, photo. It's just, how can we amplify that more? And then how can you still have ownership over that? I think a lot of times, at least I know from WorkPlay Branding's perspective, we've handed our ads over to other people and we just don't know what's happening. And so I think it's really important for you as like the founder, CEO, whoever you are in the company, COO, to know what's happening with some of these dollars and in time and investment. So I love that you give that. And all of that power up information will be in the show notes. It'll be on our Power Up page. Becca will be doing all of your creative direction before every single shoot and talking about how to amplify this with you guys. So you guys are going to have so much support between WorkPlay and Blue Light. I'm so excited.
Yeah. And just a quick note too, you mentioned you're doing those quarterly shoots. I think that's perfect because just like you see in fashion, just like you see in really any business, your ads should be refreshed, at least every quarter. And so having some seasonality behind that, being able to refresh it and test different creators is something that's also really valuable. And if we end up working with any of your clients, we'll definitely go deeper into that strategy.
I think it's so key. I know that we're supposed to end, but I need to say this. We had a member and she was utilizing her B-roll video. And then she did her next quarterly shoot and she was like, I don't know why this one video is just popping off. We need 10 more. I'm like, all right, you got it. And so it's like when you're able to see the data from the paid campaign and then go into your next shoot with more clarity on what the creative needs to be, it's like, that's when it can really start to get super good.
Yeah, 100%.
I love it. Mikhail, where can everyone find you and connect with you in the meantime?
Yeah, anywhere on social media at Mick, M-I-Q-K, and I respond.
You're so easy. I love it. Thank you so much.